Welcome to the Gentleman's Guide to the Accursed. A long while back, I'm going to say a year, I made a series of videos on inspirational media for Curseborne. Specifically, the media that inspired me, the creators that inspired me, my work on Curseborne. Different authors, and there were lots of authors who contributed to Curseborne at various points, brought their own places of inspiration with them. And for me, some of the central ones were authors like Stephen King, creators like David Lynch, R.I.P. And I have been asked more about Stephen King and his influence on Curseborne than any other creator. People who have read Curseborne have come to me at some point and said, is this basically taken from it, or is this influenced by Needful Things, and so on? And I say categorically yes. It isn't by any means a rip-off, and it isn't a tribute, but it is most definitely inspired by the work of Stephen King, because Stephen King, probably more than any other successful horror author, runs such a wide gamut of genre and different aspects of horror that it is very easy to pick any one of his stories, whether they're set in Castle Rock, or whether you're looking at something from the Dark Tower series, whether you're reading one of his classic horrors, whether you're reading a short story, or whether you're reading one of his more modern pieces. There is always something you can take and incorporate into your horror game, especially if that game is Curseborne. While Stephen King doesn't always have accursed protagonists, the idea of curses, of magic, of realities hidden behind this one are all, I would say, pretty common within Stephen King's work. And I wouldn't limit that to Stephen King. Indeed, the first horror author I was really attracted to when I was growing up was James Herbert, who is more of a, I guess, Anglo-centric. Almost, I think, all of his stories are set in England. They always have a very English feel to them. I don't know whether his work has travelled all that well internationally. And another God rest his soul moment there, because James Herbert has passed on. But he dealt with so many different aspects of horror as well that I often find myself using parts of James Herbert's work either in my writing, or the games I'm running, the stories I'm telling, and so on. Now, all that said, the reason I'm making this video is because I had someone contact me who had picked up a hard copy of The World Below. And as you know, and as I will tell you every single time, if you pick up a hard copy of The World Below and you message me through MatthewDawkins.com, well, you can request a video of your choice. And this person, Ruth, asked, thank you very much, Ruth, for picking up The World Below. Please leave a rating and a review on DriveThruRPG. Asked if you had to randomly trawl through your Stephen King books, which one would you turn into a Curseborne plot? Well, having already done that, let's see if we can do some kind of mashup instead. I have pulled a random selection of Stephen King books off of my shelves, and there are more up there, so I just grabbed the first ones I could find. So I'll run you through some of these and see which ones get your inspiration running, and see which ones have inspired me by the end of the video. So let's see, we've got Duma Key here. Duma Key is a story about a character who has a near-death experience, travels to a sort of remote seaside town, rents out a large sort of mansion on the shore, and discovers through his sketching and then his painting that he is able to paint things that more or less come to life or foresee the future. But of course, things start going horribly wrong, as they tend to do in horror stories. This is a story with an awful lot of pathos to it. It's one of Stephen King's sadder works, I would say. Not one of my favourites, so that isn't to say it's a bad book. It just didn't land with me as well as I know it did with lots of others, but I still really enjoyed reading it. I would say that the most obvious thing you could take from this, if you were to take this wholesale into a Curseborne game, would be the idea of a location, in this case, essentially a haunted house, and a cursed family that is in the background of Duma Key. Everyone else who has lived here essentially has met some terrible, terrible end due to the sea, a goddess within it, a demon, an outsider within it, that is basically exacting a toll on the person that lives there. That is a natural plot for Curseborne, especially if that goddess is influencing your work, channeling her will through you, or through someone who lives there. So Duma Key is a good source to go to for Curseborne, I could say. So I'll keep that one in mind. I think Duma Key could work nicely. Next up, we have The Outsider. The Outsider is a book I really enjoyed. In fact, I only recently read it, about last year, I suppose. And when I read it, I immediately thought, wow, not the clue is in the name. This is exactly what an outsider that's broken through a liminality and can wear the face of anybody they choose to commit absolutely heinous, sadistic acts would do. I understand there's a TV series of The Outsider. I haven't seen it. But the main gist, because the plot takes a sort of radical turn about a third of the way through, is a well-known member of the community is basically witnessed murdering, brutalizing, abusing a child and is arrested for it. All evidence points toward this person having done it, despite it turning out there being evidence that person was in a different place at the same time. And without spoiling anything, because this is a book that could get spoiled very easily, it turns out that there is another agency at play, an extra-worldly, very Pennywise-like. In fact, I would put the creature in The Outsider as the same kind of pantheon as Pennywise from It. The Outsider is basically what happens if you stop dealing with the subtle influences of liminalities and the creatures that occasionally poke their heads through. This is what happens when a real, fey, monstrous entity just is ejected out into our world and decides it's going to screw with us, or maybe has been doing so for generations. I really think this would make for a very good murder mystery style plot, especially with the whole double identity thing going on. It means it's setting up to look one way, and then all of a sudden it transpires something else is going on, usually after something tragic has occurred. It's The Outsider I would put as a definite inspiration, something you could definitely use easily for a Curseborne game. So, well, it looks like I pulled a book of short stories, so Bazaar of Bad Dreams, which is a very recent book of short stories by Stephen King, when compared to some of his other anthologies, because he has done quite a few of them. Wow, looking at all of them, so I'm having a quick look at the table of contents in Bazaar of Bad Dreams to see which one I would probably go for. I'm going to suggest, if I remember, is a very good one. It has a website. Someone basically receives a tablet that enables them to access information about absolutely anything and type information in and basically change fates, change the future, change the past via this technology, which may have been dropped to them from the future or from another reality or from the Dark Tower universe and so on. That would be a very good technological hijinks plot. If you are fans of the liminal threats like Painful.love, or the game that appeared in our sort of choose your own adventure style game on the Curseborne website, that would work nicely. This has actually got a lot of short stories in that could be turned into Curseborne plots, even the more mundane ones, like a woman just losing her mind and driving her family in her car into a wall at high speed while people are witnessing it. That is an explosive, tragic, horrific premise for a game if that's how the game opens up and your characters have got to rush to intervene. Is it anything to do with a curse? Is it something purely mundane? It's one of those things where, much like in the World of Darkness, when you're dealing with characters like Jack the Ripper, who seem to get referenced a fair amount as an example of this, is it more scary that humans can just behave this way? Or does there have to be something supernatural involved? Now, this one is the quintessential Stephen King Curseborne book, which is Needful Things. A dream entity, Nyarlathotep, shows up in Castle Rock, opens up an old curiosity shop, and promises to sell you your wishes. Basically, will sell you your dreams. They will come true. You go into his shop, you will always find what it is you want, and in turn, it will obsess you and corrupt you and turn you insane against your fellow community members. He is a trickster. Leland Gaunt, the antagonist in this one of the best villains, to my mind, in any Stephen King book, and is a really good idea for either a fallen member of the League of the Hidden Crossroads, if you want to play with an accursed gone bad, or, again, like the Outsider, this is a character from the outside who is meddling with reality, or simply a hobgob or imp that runs a store that will give you what you want as long as you're prepared to pay the price for it. Maybe when mortals stumble in there, they're always going to get strung up and screwed over, but accursed can actually make deals that benefit them. Undoubtedly, Leland Gaunt and Needful Things were a huge inspiration for my work on Curseborne. You can see it in my work on the setting material. There's the big city stuff in Curseborne, and I think we have a curiosity shop in there, which is pretty much Needful Things, I don't mind admitting. I'm sure there are other ways of incorporating elements from Needful Things into your Curseborne game, rather than the obvious. Probably the incestuous, gossipy, rather cruel community of Castle Rock. It's what I try to do with the setting I use in my Curseborne games of Junction City, which is referenced in Needful Things. It is a throwaway line, as it often shows up in... It shows up as a throwaway location in a couple of Stephen King books, so I've used it for my Curseborne games, Junction City, as I think either the place that Leland Gaunt went to or came from, either wherever. But anyway, very much recommend this. If you're looking for inspiration for Curseborne and have finished with the Accursed Tales anthology, you want to check out Needful Things. Oh, okay, this is an interesting one. I didn't notice I'd picked this one up. Mr. Mercedes. Mr. Mercedes is a book. Would I struggle to put it into a Curseborne game? Because interestingly enough, the Bazaar of Bad Dreams secondary story with the, I think it's Herman Walker's Still Alive, I think is the story, with the woman who drives her family into a wall. There's a similar premise at the beginning of Mr. Mercedes. Job fair is going on, and then someone drives a Mercedes into the job fair, kills loads of people, and never gets caught. And we pick up a few years later with the detective responsible for tracking this person down, very much washed up, hard on his luck, and gets contacted by Mr. Mercedes, the Mercedes killer, for the first time in a long time, and starts picking up the threads of the case again. Mr. Mercedes, unlike its sequels, doesn't have anything, I would say, overtly supernatural in. But again, much like Herman Walker's Still Alive, I don't think that is a bad thing. You can definitely explore Curseborne through the lens of human morality as well. I don't think I would pull off something quite so obvious as in a Curseborne game as someone driving a Mercedes into a job fair, crowd, because that would be a direct lift. But you could have some kind of spree killer. You could have some kind of foul incident that has occurred where a character has been influenced by not necessarily a direct influence, not an outsider or some kind of liminality that has actually got into someone's head with intent to say you're going to kill these people. More, this is what happens when a mortal stumbles upon something they shouldn't. They read something they shouldn't understand. They start interacting with something that should be limited to the accursed, and it results in them dropping off the deep end and doing something horrific, like in Mr. Mercedes. So that could work. It isn't one I would obviously go to, though, for inspiration. There's a few more of these. I hope you like me talking about Stephen King novels. Then we got Fairy Tale. Fairy Tale isn't one I really considered for inspiration for Curseborne, but now that it comes up, I can completely see why it would be a good inspiration for a game of Curseborne. Fairy Tale is very much a book of two halves. You have the half where you've got a character who is first finding out that there might be a world beyond this one, is befriending a crotchety old man and his dog, and is generally exposed to the supernatural in a very minor way. And then he passes through the liminal space and enters a whole new world, a Fey world. This book is a great piece of inspiration for how seriously screwed up an outside could be. I would say that the world in Fairy Tale that the protagonist passes through to is pretty much a battleground in Curseborne terms. It has been taken over by some absolutely monstrous fey creatures, Gog Magog, and various unpleasant individuals. There's gladiatorial combat between supernatural creatures, which some of you will probably enjoy and is always a welcome addition to an RPG. But there's also exploration of this alien realm that comes up in the second half. Fairy Tale is kind of a sleeper here because as I say, I didn't think of it as inspiration, but now that it comes to it, it is really the perfect liminal exploration story where you would pass through a gate, a portal, a tear in reality, and end up somewhere completely different. Even the way it's presented, at the bottom of a well that no one has disappeared down into, I think it is, for quite some time. I think it's accessible via a shed, and there's a mine shaft or something like that, or a well. It's been a little while since I've read it. Is very much in keeping, because this underground is filled with oversized bugs, which kind of imply that the world is going a little askew down there. But if you keep pushing deeper and deeper, you're going to end up in an alien space. So yeah, Fairy Tale would be excellent to pull from for a Stephen King Curseborne game. And now my favourite Stephen King novel, bar none, is 11/22/63. There is a TV series of this one. It isn't that great, in my opinion. It's not that it's a bad show. It is that it's too short to do the novel justice. It needed at least 2 or 3 seasons. It is a complete mini-series, goes from beginning to end. But I think this is well, you can see from the size of the book, it needed more than that, in my view. Just because I love absolutely every element of this novel. Yes, there are points where the investigation to Lee Harvey Oswald's mortal life, mundane life, drag on a little, but I think that results in a very dramatic and exciting payoff. You are kind of lulled into a false sense of security, and then bam! Not the bam you'd expect from Lee Harvey Oswald. Essentially, this is the apex of an epoch story for Curseborne, as our character finds that he is able to travel back in time by passing through a diner's refrigerator or storage cupboard, I think it is. Storage cupboard. Or pantry, that's a better word, and find himself back in, I think, 1958, I want to say. It might be 1950. It's the late 1950s, not 1963, because the trick behind the whole story is our protagonist, Jake, I think. I always forget character names. It isn't because they're not memorable, it's just because names are one of the things I always forget. He is told by the person who's been using this portal that he is convinced that the world is in the terrible state that it is at the beginning of this story because of JFK's assassination. Therefore, if you can go back and prevent it by killing Lee Harvey Oswald, then you will essentially make the world better. The problem is you're not just dropped the week before, and they are not certain that Lee Harvey Oswald is the only shooter, so you've got to do some investigation too. The first person who tried this failed because, and this is the recurring theme in 11/22/63, time is obdurate. In other words, it will keep flexing and trying to reset and push you into danger because you are meddling with it. Every time you change something, it is going to try and change back in a violent fashion. And so it is a really interesting way of looking at an epoch that isn't just a time-locked Great War battle, for example. This is a whole timeline. You could start in 1957, 1958, or whenever it happens to start, at which point you are running through this time as a 21st century character stuck in a historic timeline, waiting for a crucial point that you may not even be able to stop. That's the kicker. You might get to Dallas on the fateful day and discover that time is absolutely restricting your ability to do anything to stop it. So it's not how we present epochs in Curseborne, but it would be a really interesting scenario. Obviously, it came up in Red Dwarf as well, the whole what happens if you stop JFK from being killed. I'm sure it's come up in many other places too. But this, for me, is the real pinnacle. This is, as I say, my favourite Stephen King novel. I think it is just absolutely fantastic from beginning to end. And even if you're not reading it as inspiration for Curseborne, you should read it because it's brilliant. Hey, this is me again. I know there was a brief break there, but it's for this reason. It turns out this video ended up 40 minutes in length, so I've cut it in half. This is the end to part 1. I very rarely, I should say, put edits in my videos, but it turns out this one needed one. So this is me telling you this video will be continued next Monday. Do check out the second half of Stephen King's... Stephen King... Well, you know what? I'm rubbish with titles. Always have been rubbish with titles. We will call it Stephen King-influenced Curseborne. No, you know what? I'll come up with a better title than that. Anyway, look out next Monday for the second part. Thank you very much for watching the first one.